the Yang New York City mayoral race. Now, I've been um, I've been looking at it a little bit. It's been touch and go for me. I know that I think I might have read a tweet about how he essentially put his own foot over his mouth and saying that there's a business issue within New York, too many independent businesses, but I could be wrong. David, do you know more about Yang's ongoing mayoral race?
I haven't followed it that granular. I know that I understand there's been like a lot of media sort of scrutiny of him, and I was really just curious to hear your guys' thoughts because I feel like Andrew Yang has gotten mixed reception from progressives and leftists. You know, and I find myself unsure of how much I like him, I guess, or like his platform. Um,
Well,
I think he deserves credit for, bringing the topic of UBI to sort of mainstream attention in the Democratic primary debate.
Okay,
Um,
I'm dropping it in the chat. Actually, he tweeted earlier today at 7 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. You know what I hear over and over again, that NYC is not enforcing rules against unlicensed street vendors. I'm for increasing licenses, but we should do more for the retailers who are paying rent and trying to survive. Now, I think it's very pertinent to point out that it was Eric Gardner who was an unlicensed an unlicensed vendor, and it was Eric Gardner, right? Who so many years ago. I mean,
mhm.
all these instances of police violence, they're so numerous that they all kind of, and it's tragic. It's tragic. But yes, Eric Gardner was selling loose cigarettes on the street. The police intervened, and he was killed by the police. So for any serious candidate, I sincerely believe to say that, the problem we have in New York is unlicensed vendors. It's like, well, how do you plan on enforcing it? Mr. Candidate, because I think what's unsaid is that he intends for the LAP, not the LAPD, the NYPD to enforce this kind of stuff, and we've seen what's happened basically. That's my take on it. Does anybody else have any takes on it?
I definitely don't like that tweet. Definitely things like that. I feel like there's lots of little things like that to me with Andrew Yang that sort of stack up and make me sort of side eye him. I think in general, I have a sense of like, I think it's cool because he's leading in the polls, as I understand, and he is sort of like this outsider. He is sort of like an outsider. But yeah,
Yeah.
stuff like that, like it makes me feel agnostic towards him.
And to be fair, to be in a little bit of context, there's this reply to the original tweet he made. I'd like to bring more unlicensed vendors to the legal market, education for immigrant / non-English speaking vendors on rules of vending, opening more spaces for legal outdoor vending, working with small businesses to broker tensions, all would help. At the same time, it's like when you lead on the fact that your major concern is unlicensed vendors, you put yourself in this sort of, that you're being almost antagonistic towards these vendors in the first place, basically. And I know that here in California, we don't have, I mean, in New York City, you hear about bodegas all the time, these small little, almost like grocery stores that sell just about everything and anything. We don't have that kind of thing here in Southern California, but I would believe that there's quite a few of them that are unlicensed, basically. So I just sincerely believe is that, Andrew Yang. I don't think he's from the New York area. I think that he's coming into this situation, or at the very least, not from New York City itself. And I think he's coming into this situation blind,
what
thinking,
part of New York do you think he's from? I wonder. Ugh.
uh, I'm gonna guess Wall Street. I would have to. I mean, the guy's a venture capitalist, so I would have to guess by default Wall Street. But I think what's going on is that Andrew Yang, he had this genuine mojo during the 2020, during the presidential
Primary.
contest, And he had this mojo going in with, hey, let's make universal basic income a thing. And with the benefit of the ongoing pandemic, he's being proven right, basically. But I mean, Bernie Sanders was proven right in hindsight with this pandemic that universal healthcare should be a thing too. I think that at this point, Andrew Yang is being found out for who he really is, and that's an out of touch capitalist who sincerely believes that the what you could call the solution to everything and anything is to hope that the capitalist class can be reasoned with, basically, when I would think that most people would realize that there's no reasoning with them at all, basically.
So yeah, I would want to point out there's a lot of, like as has been stated, great ideas and great positions that Andrew Yang has held, and I want to give him the benefit of the doubt and the charity to believe that he genuinely believes in a lot of those. But that being said, yeah, he's made some comments that make it clear that he's a bit out of touch, and there is a certain issue of his perspective that's not really widened as much as it should be for the kind of progressive politics he's pushing for. Also, I hold grudges, and I still don't understand the reasoning in any way that makes faith in terms, or sorry, sense in good in terms sense in terms of good faith of why he threw Bernie under the bus during the primary. Right? He
How
can
did
say
he throw Bernie under the bus?
he endorsed Biden.
Oh, he did?
While
Bernie was
still running.
Well,
Rather than wait, what my question is, what did that serve you, Andrew? What was the real conversation happening behind the scenes? And be honest with us. Like, if you even feel like you're forced to do something politically, come out and tell the people what you are legally allowed to say in terms of how you're forced to make certain decisions that look like this, right? Because honestly, Biden, he got the vote that he was gonna get regardless. He was not winning. Like, when he got thrown under the bus by the others, not including Yang, right? Bernie was proving to be the better candidate by all rights. He was leading, leading, and then they endorsed Biden suddenly. That flips the primary votes. That flips what's going on, but that is also not looking at the fact that the actual populist who had a better shot against Trump was the one you threw under the bus, all of you. And it doesn't matter that Yang did it last, he still threw him under the bus before Bernie was ready to call it quits. So I say, yeah, no, if it was a battle, if it was war, I'd be like, you're not a motherfucker I want on my team, because you're just going to stab me in the back when it's convenient.
It's a trust issue is what you're trying to say, Steve.
I feel it might be a bit more difficult to place this sort of blame on Andrew Yang, that he wasn't part of the Super Tuesday gang that essentially sank Bernie Sanders' campaign when the first major primary came along. He endorsed after it seemed statistically impossible for Bernie Sanders to actually win.
It was before he conceded.
It was before he conceded, but I mean,
Right.
What did it benefit?
If he conceded, if he decide to take it all the way to the convention, would it still be a stab in the back? I mean, like, you're 1,300 delegates down. Your endorsement's not gonna matter much in the grand scheme of things.
But then, what good did it do for Andrew and his career in his campaign to even make the endorsement?
I feel the same way towards Kamala Harris made the endorsement before Bernie dropped out, but when it was kind of mathematically clear. And I feel the same way towards that endorsement in terms, I mean, obviously she's VP now, and so there was probably some sort of discussion there. But I feel
that was despicable, yeah.
I feel like, to me, it's like, why not wait for Bernie to drop out? Because I was already at that point where it was pretty much going to happen. But why not wait for Bernie to drop out? And then, because it's sort of like you're basically now going to piss off X amount of people. as opposed to waiting till once Bernie drops out, then no one can say anything because you're basically just endorsing Biden over Trump. So I didn't understand that when Harris did it. I didn't really pay as much attention to when Yang did it, but to me, I don't quite get it.
It's obvious.
It's an interesting choice. It's an interesting choice, is what I would say.
It's obvious in that there were clearly backroom deals that were made. Biden wanted the endorsements before Bernie dropped out. He wanted to win, and he talked to people behind the scenes. I can't prove what he offered them, though, as noted.
But Pete's freaking transport secretary.
There
I mean,
you
like,
go.
What happened to Amy
Obviously.
Klobuchar? Did she get anything?
Klobuchar's, what is it called? It's chairing a committee. I mean, like,
Okay.
well, actually, the Klobuchar thing is something entirely separate. I think that she got jumped for vice president because she was gearing it up, but then when freaking I don't entirely remember which one. I think it might have been. I think it might have been her that sunk Elizabeth Warren's sort of, half-hearted bid to jump on the ticket by suggesting that, it should be a black woman, and it just sort of and removed their ability to come in. But if we're going to rehash the primaries, I mean, the real people for whom these I mean, like the question of like whether or not this endorsement was something despicable and the result of a backroom deal should be probably the big three that showed up the day before the primaries, frickin' Beto, Pete, and Amy Klobuchar. And let's also, take into consideration Elizabeth Warren, who split the progressive vote.
Who didn't endorse. And like that totally deserves.
And she lingered. She was the one who I must admit lingered. That was the stab in the back. But I would go so far as to say that Andrew Yang, he didn't have pull. He waited until it was decided. The betrayal was already made. It was over.
To kind of add to this, if we are going to relitigate the 2020 primary, I would like to point out that this was an unprecedented amount of Democratic candidates, and I think this was all planned from the jump, that we all know that Bernie was going to run. Let's try to throw everything that we can at him and just muddle everything. And what happened, the results of the Iowa primary were contested. Buttigieg tried to pull a coup, and tried to pull a coup back there, and then what became the Super Tuesday massacre of both Klobuchar and Buttigieg dropping out and immediately endorsing Biden. That pretty much was and pledging their delegates to Biden, and that was pretty much the beginning of the end. But one other thing that I'd like to put into context here, I think that's the nature of almost anybody who approaches any kind of politics from a progressive standpoint, is that eventually they will come to I sincerely believe that a lot of these people, outside of maybe Bernie or maybe Nina Turner, the rest of them never had it in them to truly fight for progressive causes. I mean, for heaven's sake, look at AOC and how she's turned. I'm going to say it right now. She's turned full lib. I mean, it started with the force the vote issue, in which hundreds of people on social media were calling her and the rest of the squad, which, let's be real, was an invention by the media, not something that they came up by themselves, to withhold their vote to confirm Nancy Pelosi and leverage it for universal health care. On a moral standpoint, on an ethical standpoint, they shouldn't have voted for quite possibly the most despicable politician right now, second only to quite possibly Mitch McConnell. But they showed they showed who they were, basically. And now, AOC insisting that, hey, those kids in cages this was Trump's problem. It's like, no, this was Biden's problem. This was Biden's doing back when he was VP during the Obama administration. And just like her, Yang is in the situation too, where he's being found out as just another fraud, basically.
Yeah, like hands down, I would say when they threw Bernie under the bus, they even though they were knowingly going into an election where their argument was going to be, morally speaking, you have to choose Biden over Trump, they were at that time making the choice, not Biden over Bernie, but because Bernie was leading, they made the choice of Trump over Bernie. They'd rather risk Trump than get Bernie. And that is the whole point behind all of their garbage. So this is the thing, like you bring up AOC. Yeah, this is how politicians get corrupted. They think they're being clever. They think they're being smart. They think they're making actual concessions and deals that matter, but it just puts a bunch of blinders on them because they suddenly decide that it's okay to lie to the public as a major part of their job. AOC might still very well have the best of intentions in mind, but she's become utterly stupid like the rest of them. Just thinking, oh, I'll bullshit the public. I'll tell them shit that they know I'm lying to their faces about. And that's not going to translate as betrayal. I'll still have that cult following going, right? No, fuck you. Don't lie to me. I know you're lying to me. Knock it off.
And let's this is going to remain, this remains to be seen. And as far as Yang, I'll believe it when I see it. When it comes to any sort of when's the election for NYC mayor anyway?
It's coming up in June, actually. I just looked at that a little bit ago. But I guess, yeah, I just have mixed feelings about, on the one hand, I guess, how would you guys feel like if he wins this election? Like, it is somewhat of a
is there a legitimate progressive or otherwise leftist contender? Has Yang, is there just nobody else? Has Yang taken that spot, or is there another contender out there, basically?
Well, there's still, I'm not aware of a more progressive contender. I haven't like deep dived into the other candidates. I just thought it was interesting because it looks like he's leading in the polls. I know there's a significant portion of undecided in the polls, so it's definitely not like it's in the bag or anything like that, but it looks like he is like a viable possibility. He's not running some come from behind long shot. Like he's in it. So I just thought that was interesting, and it was just making me think about how do I really feel about Andrew Yang, and I feel very, very mixed about it. And I feel like he, like tweets like that, like you said, like it's so. I just feel like it plays to this idea of like if you can afford a spot, you're somehow better than someone who can't afford to rent a space to sell your items. And I just feel like just recently, well, not recently, but like last year, I remember I was driving home from Vaughn's and I saw this guy selling he was selling tacos on the side of the road, and I saw the cops come and shut him down. And I'm just like, why? Like, why? Like, who cares? He's just selling tacos. And like, who cares? And this is in the Valley where no one else is around. So like, I get that that's different than New York, perhaps. But I feel like, yeah, he's making this appeal to like a sort of upper lower middle class where it's like, I can afford a little space, so I'm better than you because you're on the street. And it's just like, I just feel like, why is it got to be one or the other? It should be both and he tries to say that in the tweet, but it's like, it's kind of too late. You already kind of made that appeal. So
right. I legitimately hope that a more leftist or more progressive candidate, somebody who has better convictions, who has more conviction than Andrew Yang, challenges him. It remains to be seen what's going to happen in that election. Although I do remember Cynthia Nixon was trying to run for governor of New York, and she did. For what it was worth, it seemed that her heart was in the right place. So
yeah, I liked Cynthia Nixon.
I liked her too. So let's put a pin in this and let's see how this goes. But as I know, I think we're in agreement. Not great, Andrew Yang. Not great at all.
Not stands.
Exactly. Okay, so